Hello everybody and welcome back to Recorded Words and Pages. My name is Natalie and today I have my May wrap-up. Now May was my most successful reading month yet this year as I managed to read an amazing 24 books. I honestly am so impressed that I actually managed to do that, but I will probably contribute to the fact that a lot of them were romance books, so they were easier reads, but I still enjoyed a lot of them nonetheless. However, I will be doing my wrap-ups a bit differently than I usually do, and I won't be giving like a really in-depth synopsis for each book, and some books I won't be talking a whole lot about because what I also started this month is weekly vlogging, so I vlogged every week except for the last week in June, which I actually decided to scrap my vlog for because it wasn't very good, so I'll probably talk about the books I read in that week a bit more in depth, and some of them I won't talk a whole lot about because I don't have a whole lot to say. And if you want to see my thoughts on these books, you can of course check out my weekly reading vlogs where I read it. So the first book I read this month was The Power by Naomi Alderman, and I didn't have a whole lot about this book that I felt either way. So the premise of this book is basically one day women start developing the power to shock people with their hands, and then that kind of throws the world up in chaos because now women have a lot more power than they've ever been able to have before. And I thought it was fine. It was a bit confusing. I didn't love it, but it was pretty okay. And I gave it 3 stars. So the next 2 books I'm going to talk about, I didn't read at the same time, but they're part of the same series, and that is The Deal and The Mistake by Elle Kennedy. This is her in her Off-Campus series, which is a new adult romance series, basically. And we're following this group of hockey players, and each book is a different romance. It follows a different guy and his romance with a different girl. I'm enjoying these books so far. Out of the 2 I read in May, The Deal was my favorite. It's basically the premise of Garrett, who's a hockey player, and Hannah, who's a musical major, and Hannah has to tutor Garrett to help him keep his grades up in a certain class, and then they fall in love. And then The Mistake, honestly, I can't remember a whole lot about what that one's about. I definitely had some issues with that one more than I did with The Deal. I gave The Deal 4 stars. And I ended up giving The Mistake 3 stars just because one thing was the main character kept mentioning how she had OCD and so she had to keep her room clean, but like that's not OCD. So, and it was just like the amount of time she mentioned it was a bit much, and it was like, okay, either you like mention it once or just talk about how you like to keep your room clean and don't bring OCD into this, or flesh it out more, like actually have her have OCD, but they didn't do that. And then also just the conflict and like the resolution at the end of this book I didn't love. It seemed like they were placing the blame on the wrong person, and I didn't love that, so I ended up giving that one like a 3 star. Next up I read Come Back to Be My Mila Gray, which is basically about this girl who falls in love with her brother's best friend, and they're in the Marines. So yeah, and that one was fine. I didn't really buy the chemistry between the 2 characters, and I'm not in love with the brother's best friend trope because there's just always going to be this annoying confrontational scene. And yeah, I didn't love this one and I gave it 3 stars. I don't have a whole lot to say about that. Then I read Windwitch, which is the sequel to Truthwitch, which we're basically set in this world where we're following our main character, Safi, and she has the ability to just tell truth from lying. And she keeps this power secret, and then one day she has to go on the run because a blood witch who has the ability to scent people's magic and follow them catches this whiff of her blood and is hunting her. And there's also in this world a 20-year truce that is about to come to an end. And I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed Truthwitch when I read it in April, I think. And I really enjoyed Windwitch. I liked seeing the character progression in Merrick. And I definitely have my 2 favorite characters, and I'm really excited to continue on with the series. It is a bit confusing, but I have a feeling it's going to be quite satisfying at the end. And I gave Windwitch 4 stars. Now, one I'm not rating because of some circumstances with the book and some of the content in the book that is very questionable is The Duke and I by Julia Quinn. And we're basically following our main characters, Simon and Daphne, as they start fake dating so Daphne can have more prospects as suitors, and mothers will stop trying to set Simon up with their daughters, and it's the romance between them. There is a very questionable scene in this book, and I would advise you to look it up and try to read more into it if you are interested in reading this book. It's not okay and it never should have been written, and it was definitely a product of its time, but besides that, I really enjoyed the book. And then I reread The Kiss of Deception by Mary Ear Pearson, and we're basically following our main character as she's the princess in this kingdom, and she runs away the day of her wedding because she does not want, it's an arranged marriage, and she doesn't want to be entered into this. She's taking her destiny in her own hand. And then two men follow her to the village she's run away in. One is an assassin sent to kill her, and the other is the prince she's supposed to marry, and it's just kind of following that. She, of course, starts interacting with the two boys. There's a love triangle, and the whole premise of the book is you don't know which boy is which, and I enjoyed this. I really did. I gave it 4 stars. I liked it even better upon reread, which I don't know what that says. I'm currently actually reading the sequel, and I am not enjoying it, which I knew was going to happen due to where the first book left off, but I still have hope for this series that'll end up being one I really like. So the next two I'm going to talk about are ones that I didn't read back to back, but they're both in the same romance series, and that is Undercover Romance and Crazy Stupid Romance, I think it's called, and these are by Lisa K. Adams, and basically it's part of the series called the Romance Book Club, which is basically following the top men in Nashville's elite society, and they run a romance book club to help them figure out how to treat women right. And in Undercover Romance, we're following Liv and Mac, and they're trying to take down a celebrity chef that has been harassing his employees, and in the other one, we're following our two main characters, which honestly, this is embarrassing, but I don't remember their names. Lexi, or something like that, I think is her name, as she finds out she has a sister, and she elicits the help of her best friend, who we meet in the second book, to help her try to figure out what's happening, as he's kind of like he's like kind of a hacker dude. And yes, the romance between the respective couples, and I really enjoyed this series. I gave, I think, both books 4 stars just because they were a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed the series, and I'm very excited because I think another one is coming out, I think in June, so excited for that. Next up, I reread one of my absolute favorite books of all time, and that is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book is about Evelyn Hugo, who is this Hollywood starlet who, of course, had 7 husbands, and we're following her as she's finally telling her story as to what her life story is. And so the book is what kind of, there's alternating chapters, but we're following the Evelyn's life story as she tells it, and also the story of Evelyn and the person who's interviewing her, as there's a plot that's going on there. And the thing that I love about this book so much is Taylor Jenkins Reid's ability to make these seem like real characters. You finish this book and you completely believe that Evelyn Hugo was a real Hollywood star, that the films she were in were real, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna go watch her movies, and then you remember she's a fake person. That's a book character, and it's hard for me to like put into words how much I love this book, but it's one of my favorite books of all time, and I gave it 5 stars. Next one was one that I was definitely really disappointed by, and that was Ship by Angie Hockman. In this, we're following our two main characters as our main character, I think her name is Henley, really doesn't like her coworker Graham, and then they find out that they're up for the same promotion. They have to go on a company cruise to the Galapagos and then create a pitch from that, and then whoever has the better pitch gets the promotion, and of course they fall in love, and yada yada yada. Didn't buy the chemistry, the main character was annoying, and I hated how the author ignored the topic of what's happening in the Galapagos and how tourism is ruining it, and I just couldn't get into this book, and I just really did not enjoy this, so I gave it 3 stars, probably more like a 2 star if I'm being completely honest. Next up, I read Second First Impressions, which is by Sally Thorne. This is her 3rd book, and she's also the author of The Hating Game, which is a romance that I really love, and we follow our main character, Ruthie, and she works at a retirement home, and then Teddy, who is the son of the kind of guy who owns the retirement home, he comes to the retirement home because he has to work there for a bit, and basically the first time he meets Ruthie, he thinks she's an old woman, and it's just basically the romance between the two of them, and I thought this was really cute. I love seeing them go from like not liking each other to friends to, oh, maybe we're something more. I thought it was really well done. The only thing was I did not like how the author handled Ruthie's parents. They were kind of abusive towards her, mentally abusive towards her, and the author really just didn't delve into that or deal with it correctly, I felt. So I knocked down a star for that, and just some general things about how it was kind of hard to read the book being in Ruthie's head, as she definitely has anxiety, but I gave it 4 stars, and I really did enjoy it, and I'm excited to read more by Sally Thorne. Continuing on with the 4 stars, we have A Promise of Fire by Amanda Boucher, which is a fantasy romance. In this, we're following Kat, who is this really powerful person. It's kind of hard to tell what her powers is. She's called the Kingmaker, and she has run away from her life, as she had a rough home life, as her mother was very abusive towards her and her siblings. And we're following Griffin, who is a warlord who has kind of conquered part of, his family has conquered part of this land, I guess. I don't know. There's like 3 different countries in this land, and Griffin's family has conquered one of them, which is kind of unheard of because they don't have magic. People who have magic are usually the rulers, and so Griffin kidnaps Kat because he knows he needs someone with magic to help protect his realm, and they're gonna fall in love. And I enjoyed it. 4 stars. I mean, there were some like cringy moments with the romance in it, but I don't know. I enjoyed the plot, and I'm thoroughly excited to read the next one. One that definitely did not go the way I wanted it to was Fix Her Up by Tessa Bailey. I thoroughly did not enjoy this book. I gave it 2 stars because it was weird and uncomfortable, and just no. We're following our main character, Georgie, and she's been in love with her brother's best friend. Don't remember his name. Why do I feel like it's Travis? It's probably Travis. He was this amazing baseball star, except for now he isn't. His career's ended because he got really injured, and they're gonna fake date. Yeah. I did not enjoy it. The power dynamic between the two of them just felt really messed up. And Travis, we're just pretending like that's his actual name, was very possessive towards Georgie, and I really didn't like it, so 2 stars for that one. Then I reread the Check Please graphic novel duology, and oh my god, I love this. We're following Biddy, who goes to college to play hockey, and he loves to bake, and he's also gay, and it's fabulous, folks, and just he falls in love with one of his teammates, and it's adorable. I love this book, and yeah, I gave both volumes, I think, 4 stars. Okay, I reread one of my favorite romance books, and that's The Honey Don't List by Christina Lauren, and we're following our 2 main characters as they work for the same kind of people. They work for these people who own a home design store, but the Melissa and Tripp, who are the people who own like the home good thing, they really don't get along. They're married, but they have a struggling relationship, and our 2 main characters have to go on their book tour with them to kind of save everything. Save them from getting bad press, and they're gonna fall in love. So yeah, and they don't really like each other at the beginning of the story, and it was cute. I didn't like it as much the second time. I don't really know why, but yeah, I mean, it was fine. I gave it 4 stars, and I really like Christine Lauren as a writing duo, and I'm excited to read their next book. Some more graphic novels I read were Heartstopper Volume 1 and 2, and this is following Nick and Charlie, and it's set in England, and it is the love story between the 2 of them. So I am very sorry if anything in this video just changed. My phone just shut me off, and I realized the volume in this video was not very good, so I apologize for that. So things may sound a bit different then, but Heartstopper, we follow Nick and Charlie, who are 2 students at a school in Britain, and it's the romance between the 2 of them, and it's absolutely adorable. I love seeing them fall in love, and it also does deal with some important topics like figuring out what your sexuality is, and I think in later volumes it's going to deal with eating disorders and mental health issues, so yes. But I gave both volumes 4 stars, and I thoroughly enjoyed them. We're in the home stretch. Next up, I read my absolutely favorite book of the month, and that is The Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang, and this is the sequel to The Poppy War, and in The Poppy War we follow Rin, who goes to a military academy to get away from her life down south, and then she learns how to call on a god, and life in the military academy isn't great, and then they go to war. Short synopsis of that. Yay. The Dragon Republic destroyed me. I don't think there's really any other way to put it. This book absolutely wrecked me. It's one of my favorite books, if not my favorite book I've read this year, and yes, the series is amazing, but do look up trigger warnings before going into it because there's a lot of them. This is a grimdark fantasy book. Okay, next up, I read another historical romance, and that is Say Yes to the Marquess, and it was fine. We follow our main character, Cleo, as she finally decides she's gonna break off this engagement to a guy she's been engaged to for like 8 years, and then his brother is like, no, you can't do that, and then he's gonna like plan their wedding, and they're gonna fall in love. I feel like that's all I can really say for this. The chemistry with the 2 of them was fine, wasn't anything amazing. I didn't love the hero in the story. He was a bit annoying and just like didn't really care what the main character thought, and yeah, it was fine. I'll definitely continue reading Tessa Dare books, so yeah. Another romance I read, which I did not love a whole lot, was The Right Swipe by Alicia Ray, and in this we follow our 2 main characters, Rihanna and Samson. Rihanna owns a dating app, and then Samson is this former NFL player, and then they had like a one-night stand, and then Samson ghosted her, and now Rihanna like hates him, and then we follow them a few months later as they reunited, kind of as Samson is working for her rival company, and they have to work together for some stuff, and it's romance between the 2 of them. Like, it was just fine. I wasn't in love with them or their chemistry. I mean, they certainly had it, but like I just found this very mediocre, but I think I will be continuing on with this series, so yeah, I like I said, I don't have a whole lot to say about this one. Then I read The Loveliest Chocolate Shop in Paris, and this we follow our main character, Anna, as she works in a chocolate factory in London, or in Britain, and then one day she gets injured, and she has to go work at one of the best chocolate shops in the world, and that's in Paris, and it's just basically following her life story. Like, it's hard to describe this book because I don't like the term that would probably be best to describe it, but that's like chick lit. It's like a contemporary story, and it's just following her as she explores Paris. And we're also following the story of her French teacher, who she's reunited with in the hospital, and is the reason she goes to Paris, as her French teacher went to Paris when she was a young girl, 17 or so, and we're following her story as she went to Paris and fell in love with a guy. It's a lovely story. I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars, probably because there was just like this weird obsession with people's weight. Anna's constant like, oh, I've lost weight. Oh, I'll never be as skinny as these French girls. Oh, he doesn't love me because I'm not as skinny as the French girls. And I'm like, can we not? So yeah, I mean, I enjoyed that one, and I'm definitely going to be continuing on with this author's work. We're on to the final 2 books. Next up was A Cuban Girl's Guide to Tea and Tomorrow. And in this book we follow our main character, whose name I have probably forgotten. Great. And she's always planned to take over her abuela's Cuban pastry shop in Miami. And then the trifecta happens. Her abuela dies, her boyfriend dumps her, and her best friend leaves her. And so she does not handle this very well, and her parents decide to send her off to England, to live with her aunt and uncle to kind of deal with this, And over there she meets Orion, and he decides he's going to take her under his wing and show her around their town in England, and of course they're going to fall in love. I enjoyed this book. Something really weird I found with it was the writing style made it easier to listen to than to read, and I will link a Goodreads review below in this video, because some readers, and I definitely noticed it after reading it and looking at reviews, had a really big problem with the way the author talked and treated Africa in the story. The main character's friend goes to Africa on a mission trip, and the way she talked about Africa was very degrading and not great. So I will leave that review down below for y'all to check it out. And I gave that book 4 stars mainly because of that. I was kind of teetering between a 4 or a 5, and then I looked at reviews and I saw that, and I was like, oh yeah, I see that, definitely. I am going to give it a 4 star now instead. And then the final book I read this month, which I really didn't read this book. This month I finished it in June, but I am counting it because it was my classic for the month, and that is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis, which is the first or second book in the Chronicles of Narnia series, depending on how you look at it. And yeah, I enjoyed this book. We follow Lucy, Edmund, Peter, and Susan. There we go. As they travel into Narnia, and they have to defeat the White Witch, and it's magical, and it's a wonderful adventure, and I gave it 4 stars, and I'm really excited to continue on with the series. And yes, that is my May wrap-up. I read a lot of books this month, and I read a lot of really good books this month. I'm really happy with my reading, and I felt like I made sure I was reading books I wanted to read, and yes. So yes, that is my May wrap-up. Down below you'll find a link to all of the books I talked about in this video, as well as my Goodreads and my Bookstagram if you want to follow me there. Subscribe to see more content from me, and I will see you all in my next video very soon. Bye!